Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when Bill English became Minister of Finance in 2008, he inherited 9 years of budget surpluses from a Labor government. He was so impressed, Mr. Speaker, that in his first speech in December 2008, he admitted to the country that the country's books were in reasonable shape. He said there is a global financial crisis, but this is the rainy day that New Zealand had been preparing for. And, Mr. Speaker, after 3 budgets, each of which have run record deficits, today we had the new financial statement from the Government of New Zealand. The new financial statement. It's just a couple of months since the budget. The budget showed us that there would be a $16.8 billion deficit, and these financial statements tell us that the gross debt is going to get worse by over $3 billion, Mr. English. Gross debt worse now, since the budget, it's going to be worse by a further $3 billion. And we know that the deficit, Mr. Speaker, is going to be $20 billion higher than this time last year. And what frightens me, Mr. Speaker, and any New Zealander who is interested and concerned about the future of their country, is that there is no plan to tackle that debt problem. He is a minister that borrows and hopes. Borrows and hopes because there is no plan, Mr. Speaker, unless, of course, you count the flogging off of New Zealand assets overseas. That's really going to help. That's really going to help, Mr. Speaker. But I looked at the budget document because I thought we're selling our most valuable assets, and surely that will show that over time our debt problem is going to get better, not worse. What does this budget statement produced by Mr. English actually show the country? It shows the country that in 5 years' time, the trend of our debt is not to get better. Our net debt is going to double over the next 5 years. Next 5 years, Mr. English, his achievement will be to double New Zealand's debt. And where is the plan? Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not the only one asking that question, because Jenny McManus in one of the Saturday newspapers wrote an article about, after interviewing the 40 top business leaders in this country, natural constituency for the national government, right of centre, and what did they say? They said overwhelmingly, Mr. Speaker, and I quote it, that there was no confidence that this government had a clear economic strategy or vision to guide its policy making. That is the judgment of 40 top industry leaders. And they said, what else did they say? They said this national government has squandered its opportunities, that it's been tinkering around the edges instead of tackling the big issues. I want to say to Mr. English that when unemployment is 40% among young Maori in Northland, he has no plan to tackle that. I want to say to him that when 10,000 houses need to be rebuilt in Christchurch, when the number of apprenticeships is going down and the industry traineeships is going down, there is no plan to upskill New Zealand. I want to say that when we want to get out of the hole that New Zealand's in, by making a smart, innovative economy, you increase research and development expenditure. You don't slash it like Mr. Key and Mr. English did in cutting the R&D tax credits that were so valuable for the future of this country. Those industry leaders are right. There is no plan. It's not a plan when New Zealanders are faced with a rising cost of living to increase that further by a GST increase they promised never to introduce, and then give the tax cuts to the most wealthy people in this country, while low and middle income people didn't get enough to meet the increased cost of living. That's not a plan to improve the situation of New Zealanders, Mr. Speaker. It's not a plan to increase our well-being of our economy by selling off assets that are more valuable in terms of their dividends for New Zealanders to keep than they are to flog off to foreigners. It's not a plan, Mr. English, to sell off New Zealand farmland increasingly to overseas buyers. And when you see another $33 million worth of land in Dipton being flogged off to German investors, I say to Mr English, where is his plan for New Zealand to own its future?